Rania Al-Mashat, it is great to see you again here at the World Bank IMF annual meetings. Your purview has grown since the last time we spoke. You're now Minister of Planning, Economic Development, and International Cooperation. We're going to touch on all those things in one way or another, but first, I want to start on Gaza. In Egypt, in Sharm el-Sheikh, a ceasefire deal is signed this week. After these 2 violent years, what's your reaction?
Well, first, it's great to be here and to meet you again, Tony. And absolutely, yesterday was a monumental moment. A big salute to His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and, of course, to President Trump, chaperones of putting the ceasefire in order. And as President Trump mentioned, this is durable. So this is what not just the region needs, but also the world needs. There's no development without stability and peace. And we're here at the annual meetings talking about development. So that's only possible if we do have peace. There's going to be a very big role going forward in terms of the reconstruction of Gaza, in terms of making sure that the past 2 years, with all the implications on the Palestinian people, is moving forward in an orderly fashion. So I think there's a lot of excitement from yesterday. We saw a very strong, coordinated, global, multilateral stance on what needs to be done going forward. So I think it gives a lot of optimism. One of the key economic implications globally has been what happened to the Suez Canal in terms of a trade pathway. So for sure, the signature yesterday will ensure that trade can come back in an orderly fashion that affects not just Egypt, but the global economy.
I was going to ask you about the Suez Canal specifically and also wider economic impacts to Egypt. Obviously, there's been a huge humanitarian toll, but there's been an economic toll as well. And talk a little bit about the impact Egypt has felt and what you're hoping will come out of this now that the ceasefire is agreed upon.
No, as I mentioned, the ceasefire is very important for more than one reason. We've seen what happened to oil prices. We're seeing the expectations of what happens to the Suez Canal. We're also seeing as interest rates start to come down, the return of more investor confidence and return to the region. So there are multidimensional implications of the ceasefire. In the case of Egypt, when we take a look at our economy, and I have to say that the conflict started in October 23. Egypt's government was committed to reform. March 24, despite everything that was happening, very bold structural reforms on the fiscal side, on the monetary side, on governance of public investments, created a turnaround in the economic story. Since then, our economy has been rebounding, recovering very steadily. Last quarter of this fiscal year, we grew 5%. And I have to say it's 5% despite the decline in Suez Canal receipts, as well as implications on gas and oil from previous shocks. So we're very happy with this recovery.
I'm going to ask a couple more questions about Egypt's economy, but I want to just stay with Gaza for 1 second. So your government just awarded President Donald Trump the highest honor in Egypt, the Order of the Nile. What was the reasoning behind that, and how do you view Egypt's relationship with the U.S. right now?
I mean, as was mentioned in the press releases from our president, His Excellency Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, brokering a durable peace has always been lying on the shoulders of the U.S. as being able to, leverage the close relationship with Israel and push for a balanced approach. So I think this has been what we've seen in the announcements by the president, what we've seen in the press releases. This award is a very special award. It is provided by the president for occasions of exceptional circumstances. So this was, again, a very timely moment, a moment after 2 years of continuous suffering. We come to a conclusion. So I think this was the motivation behind it. Also, the Nile is very special to Egypt. And with what's happening today, to get the award of the Nile has another significance, particularly as Egypt is trying to reach a resolution on the implications of what's happening from the Renaissance Dam on agriculture and on land in Egypt.
So, one very bright spot in the economy in Egypt has been tourism. It was surprising to me that in 2024 you actually hit a record high despite what's been happening in the region. What do you attribute that to, and how is that helping Egypt?
Well, you know, Tony, I was a Minister of Tourism in Egypt for 2 years, between 2018 and 2020. And tourism is fundamental for Egypt. It's 15% of GDP. And when you take a look at tourism globally, it accounts for 1 in every 4 jobs. The employment multiplier is quite high. For us in Egypt, we have done so much investment, physical investment in the infrastructure to make it easier for tourists to go from one place to the other. A lot of investments in airports. The Grand Egyptian Museum, the biggest museum dedicated to one civilization, is going to open on November 1st. And we have an offering of cultural tourism with leisure for the first time that could be compact. Of course, this comes on the back of, after COVID, there was a low movement in tourism. There's an incentive and an excitement for everybody to want to increase travel. We benefited from this global recovery. The depreciation of the exchange rate was also a factor. And the third point is the experience so far from everybody who has visited has been a positive one, and we want to push that. And let me also conclude that structural reforms on a sectoral level, if I go back to what we're discussing here at the IMF and the World Bank annual meetings, becomes extremely important. We have put tourism as a key sector, priority sector of investment, of change, so that we can actually create more jobs.
So to that point, with 15% of your GDP relying on tourism, how do you ensure that that benefits the widest swath, small business owners, women-owned businesses, not just huge resorts?
You know, thank you so much for that question. And it's very important that when we look at sectors, we look at employment multipliers. Employment multipliers relate to each direct job creates how many indirect jobs. So you're absolutely correct. One tourist comes, there's transportation, there's handicrafts, there's restaurants, there's tour guides. So the number of people that can tailor and get employed around one tourist is quite significant. Let me just advertise something that we've done. We've issued our narrative for economic development, reforms for growth, jobs, and resilience. And as you can see, the message from both institutions here is that countries should continue structural reforms to push growth and create jobs. That's what development should be about. And in our narrative, we are focusing on structural reforms that exactly push that in sectors of priority tourism is one, ICT sector is one, manufacturing is one. Egypt is open to investors in these sectors. We're also looking at localization because pushing for better jobs is also happening at the local level. So we're trying to put all of this together.
One final question. So as you talk about international investment, as development funds start to dry up, particularly from the US, but other countries as well, there was a decline overall in 2024. Is private sector investment more important than ever, and how are you attracting it?
Thank you so much, Tony, for that question. And you started the introduction by saying you're Minister of Planning, Economic Development and International Cooperation. And let me say that that ministry is all about financing for economic development. And financing, you mentioned ODA comes down, and it has come down. Nonetheless, all IFIs are talking about concessional finance to push private sector investment. Egypt has been a platform for IFIs to work together to finance the private sector. In the past 5 years, we've been able to avail more than $17 billion to the private sector in Egypt. And this is something that we want to continue going forward. So investments, but investments being able to finance themselves in the cheapest possible way. So IFIs, you take a look at the World Bank today, part of their reform is a one platform guarantee for private sector through MIGA, IBRD, etc. I can go on for a very long time, but just for everybody who's watching, concessional finance to the private sector has become a priority for the different multilateral development banks. Egypt has been able to mobilize that for its private sector, be it Egyptian or foreign, and we want to continue that going forward. We have a blueprint of where we want to go, and that clarity with respect to where we want investment, and also the commitment to continue reforms have been quite important for us. And I conclude by the credibility that Egypt has with the international community today. International cooperation is possible, and multilateral action and collective action also pushes us a great way forward.
Minister Rania Al-Mashat, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tony.